رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. How's everyone feeling? Well, inshallah, everybody's good? Alhamdulillah. All praises for Allah for bringing us here safe and sound. It's a lot of rain out there tonight. The roads were pretty jammed, a lot of traffic. There's a little bit of flooding. And alhamdulillah, we know as Muslims and as believers is that there's always a thin line or a fine balance between talking about things, explaining the nature of things, and between complaining and becoming disgruntled, becoming impatient, and speaking about things that are above and beyond our control, and speaking about things in a manner which are unbefitting of us as servants and as slaves. Things that we think we understand, we think we know about, but in actuality, we really don't. We think that we understand. We think what's best for us. But in actuality, when we actually look and investigate, rather, there are things that no matter how much thought we put into them, no matter how much investigation, no matter what microscope is used, we still don't get it. And that's because our minds, our hearts, our faculties of understanding and feeling and sensing are at best limited, at best. And this is the nature of the human being. So to tell someone about the weather, to explain to someone about the weather, to explain to someone the nature of the weather is fine, inshallah. But to complain and to lose spirit, to become disgruntled, to become grumpy, to become irritated, to become bothered, and to blame things and to curse things and to have a negative approach towards things is never ever the akhlaq of the Muslim. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, in the authentic hadith, he says, "La tasubbu rih." Do not curse the wind. Never curse the wind. We know that the wind only blows, quote unquote, it's sent by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you see something that you like from the wind, this is what you say. And when you see something which you don't like, it's displeasing, it's too strong, it's very cold, then you say another thing. But never ever curse the wind. Never curse the wind. And the same applies to rain. Rain, many human beings, they complain about, it's so wet. Oh, it's raining cats and dogs, we say in the United States. I don't know what they say in the UK, but it says cats and dogs. And many people in America, they say, oh, you're going to the UK? Wear this, pack this. It's going to be raining, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's so much rain. And they complain and they complain and they complain. And today, we've met many brothers who've complained about the rain. It says, well, it's the UK, or it's England, or you're in London, or you're here in Birmingham, or you're here, alhamdulillah for the rain. The rain is a blessing. And the rain symbolizes many great things in the life of the Muslim. Many great things in the life of the Muslim. And from that is forgiveness and the washing away of sins, the washing away of evil, the washing away of bad deeds through tawbah, through istighfar. If there is a difference between the two, is tawbah and istighfar the same thing or are they different? And through other acts of righteousness, acts of ibadah, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He gives us the ability and He allows us to have our sins forgiven and wiped away through these acts. And from that is the symbolicism of rain. Rain represents a thing. Without rain, there's no food to eat. There's no water to drink. Things don't grow except through water. The water that is contained within wells, the water that people put into different suppositories and things like this, it comes from rain. So rain is a blessing. And the believer is always going to find good no matter what the weather. If it's cold, if it's hot, if it's sunny, if it's dry, the believer is always going to say, Alhamdulillah. The believer is always going to be patient. And the believer, most importantly, is going to adjust. He's going to be resilient. It's raining outside, you pull out your umbrella or your rain boots or your jacket or the parka or the hood or whatever else is needed. Drive with more caution, slow down. Maybe you're driving too fast as is. Maybe people are in a rush too much, so the rain is a blessing for them and it forces them to slow down. And there are things that are above and beyond our minds as humans. And that's because we always have to understand is that we are limited as human beings. We're limited. When people talk about atheism, and people talk about Islam, and people talk about the existence of God. Once I was at a debate in which there was a Muslim debating someone who doesn't believe in any religion or any faith or any spirituality. And they were fighting and arguing over, does God exist? Is there an existence of God? After back sitting and watching the debate, being dumbfounded and baffled and utterly appalled as someone to believe and to think that this whole entire universe is natural and it just came into existence by itself because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't enter into my understanding, into my comprehension. The best example that I can think of was that of an automobile. No matter how fine the automobile may be, no matter how well constructed and how great it was put together, it's still an automobile. And there is a limit. There's a limit of speed. There's a limit of how far you can go with regards to mileage. There's a limit of wear and tear that's placed on the car, no matter how fast you want the car to go. And that's our brain as humans. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And Allah says, we've only been given a little bit of knowledge. And there are many amazing feats that humans have achieved with regards to intellectual ability and talent and skill and things being recorded and a person being a prodigy with regards to what he has memorized, what she has memorized, and the ability to retain and to think and to feel, let alone the concept of art and artistic expression. There's no doubt about that. But at best is flawed, and at best is limited, and there is a cap of things that we understand that we can't reach beyond that. And from that is weather. You may think that it's bad, but Allah knows it's better for you. You may think that this weather is good for you, but Allah Azza wa Jal knows the opposite. So therefore submit to Allah, but it doesn't mean that we can't explain these things and talk about these things, as Allah Azza wa Jal told us in the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he was with his fatah, the young man who was serving him, and they were on a journey of seeking knowledge. They wanted to go and meet someone who had some knowledge. As Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma and others have narrated, one day Musa was standing up, teaching Bani Israel, and a man asked him, do you know someone who's more learned than you? Is there anyone who has more knowledge than you do, O Musa? And we know that Musa said, no, there's no one who has more knowledge. And Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Bella Abdun al Khadir. Rather, our servant Khidr has some things that he knows more or better than you do. And then he asked for the way. How can I find this man? How can I travel towards him? And Allah Azza wa Jalla explained to him and revealed to him the junction of the two seas, the phenomenal behavior of the fish, etc. What's mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf. Al-Muhim, Musa alayhi salam, he traveled and he said, لَقَدْ لَقِينَا فِي سَفْرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا. He says, we've become very exhausted. We've traveled for a great period of time. We've become hungry. We've become worn out in search of this man, Khidr. And the ulama of Islam, they say that this proves is that it is permissible for a person to talk about what's happening and what's going on. And that doesn't mean that a person is being impatient and complaining. But as I've just mentioned to you, is a thin line. Between it's raining outside, we're a little late, and between, oh man, it's raining outside. It's so much rain. I'm tired of all of this rain in the UK. There's a thin line. And oftentimes the shaitan, he plays a game. And he pushes you and he edges you to talk about how cold it is, to talk about how hot it is. And the next thing you know, you're displeased with what Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you. You're displeased and you don't even realize it. So oftentimes it's best just to not say anything. How's the weather outside? Alhamdulillah. We're running a little late because of traffic, not because of rain. Wahakada. It's bad weather outside versus it isn't the most pleasant weather, or it's inclement weather, or something like that. So we have to be careful with what we say. We have to be careful with how we word things. And we all know that the shaitan, as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah has explained, from the points of attack upon the son of Adam is that which his tongue puts forth. What is said and uttered upon the tongue is one of the main points of attack of shaitan upon the son of Adam, is to get him to say things that he shouldn't say. And oftentimes it is a thin line, borderline between permissible, makruh, and plain out haram. And that comes from a person talking about a thing or speaking about a thing which really isn't his place to do so. So with that being said, thank you very much for bringing me and inviting me here to your mosque or to your masjid. It's my honor, it's my pleasure. Alhamdulillah, the trip has been going very well. It's been going very smooth by the grace of Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. It's my third time here in the United Kingdom. The first trip was amazing. The second trip was amazing. Alhamdulillah, this third trip is amazing as well. I never thought and I never felt that a day would come in which I would travel across the Atlantic Ocean to lecture, to speak about Islam to so many different people. And that there will be so many strangers, brothers whom I've never met before, in which they walk up to you, they give you a hug, they give you a gift and says, I love you for the sake of Allah. Or some of them will outright, they'll just say, I love you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Or please come over here. Please, I have to take a picture with you. Please, I need to take a picture with you. Please, can you sign my book, the book that you wrote? Or it's nice to meet you. Or it's such a pleasure to see you. You don't even have to give a talk. It doesn't matter that you're late. We just want to see you in person. Let alone someone saying, I watch your classes. I benefit from your lectures. Thank you very much for, by Allah's permission, changing my life. And we've had people contact us before saying, I started making salah again when I watched your videos. One person, there's a woman, she said, I left Islam and I came back to Islam because I was watching your videos. And things like this is very humbling feeling. It's a very heart-touching feeling. And it goes to show you that you never know what Allah has in store for you. You never know what Allah has in store for you. You never know what is decreed for you. And the only thing that you have to do is put your trust in Allah, follow your dreams, and bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, embark. Inshallah ta'ala, and the boat will take you where Allah means for that boat to take you. So with that being said, advice on raising children. How to raise children. I'm sure you've heard many lectures on this subject. Many brothers more eloquent than me, more learned than I am, with more experience than me. Obviously, I'm young. I'm older than what many people think and feel, but I'm not that old. I'm not that old. I'm still relatively young. So I'm sure you've heard lectures on this topic. Some brothers, mashallah, they may have 10 children, 8 children, 7 children. Some brothers may have grandchildren. They have a great deal of experience on how to practically raise children. We have some speakers and sisters as well. We don't want to forget our sisters. Sisters have talks. Sisters have books. They have conferences and different forums in which they talk about the way of raising children properly. One of the most common books in the United States is How to Talk to Kids That Kids Will Listen. Very popular book. Maybe it's popular here too, I'm not sure. All of these different books is a whole movement of the proper way of understanding how to raise children. And we know that some people, they have good theory. They have sound theory, but they lack practice. Good theory, facts, statistics, psychology, nutrition, and even in Islam. Allah says this hadith says that. They have a good sound theory of how to raise children, the do's and the don'ts. But they either have no practice or they lack practice, or their practice is poor. It's easy to write a book. It's easy to give a lecture. I'm a doctor in child psychology, and this isn't something which is strange. You find many people who have these degrees and they write these books, they aren't even married. And they have no social life whatsoever. This is a reality. This isn't something which is strange. And then you find others who have 10 children, 12 children, 14 children. You have people who have grandchildren, and they have a ton of experience, years and years and years of experience. But you find that their theory is extremely flawed. Major problems in their theory and how they look at how a child should be raised, Islamically and or worldly. When it comes to Islam, this is how boys should be raised, and this is how girls should be raised. Of course, a woman shouldn't do this, and of course, a boy can't have this profession. A man should do this, and a woman should have that. And that's incorrect, Islamically, according to the Quran and according to the Sunnah. Or when it comes to the worldly practices, you'll find that how they treat their children. No, of course, a man should never cry. Of course, a man should never tell his son that he loves him. Of course, a man should never bring his daughter to the mosque. Take her out right now. She belongs on the sister's side. It's not where she belongs. His practice is wrong. And this man may have 6 daughters. He may have 5 daughters. He may have granddaughters. But it doesn't mean that his theory is correct just because he has an abundance of practice. And there are a few parents and a few people who are educated Islamically and worldly scholars who have the best of both worlds. Allah has given them sound mind and have sound theory of what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And they also have children or grandchildren. And a person says, Alhamdulillah, I studied this, I went to school, I became educated, And since then, I've tried it out on 3 of my children, and it's been a success. 2 out of 3 of them made it. Or my children, I didn't raise them the best way, unfortunately, but I read some books, I took some classes, I went to some workshops, and now I'm reliving my chance and my opportunity through my grandchildren. So there's some who have sound theory and good sound practice. There are those who have no theory, no practice, practice without theory, etc. Everyone understand this? So it's very important for us to have both correctly. So with that being said, I'm sure that many people have come to you and spoken to you on the topic in a better and simpler way. So what I want to do, Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, is give myself, I have children, some advice, which I feel is one of the most important pieces of advice with regards to raising children. Because, of course, in the lectures and the books, we have the concept of, number one, the obligation of raising children and the obligation of nurturing our children and cultivating them, and the danger of having children and not raising them properly. The danger of having a child, of having a grandchild, and not doing your Islamic responsibility and not carrying out the correct theory and the correct practice. We know this. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum naran. O you who believe, O Muslims, qu, make yourselves far from the hellfire, far from Allah's wrath, far from Allah's punishment. In other words, you really don't have a chance. You have no patience upon the fire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you actually think about it, you ever burnt yourself? You ever picked up a hot plate? Famous expression that we have in the United States, we say, he dropped you faster than a hot plate. Faster than a hot plate. In other words, when a plate is hot, you don't have to think how hot it is. Your body immediately, instinctively forces you to let it go. It forces you to let it go. Your nerves involuntarily force you not to touch that thing. And that's nothing more than a piece of china, a plate, in which there are many things which are far, far intense with regards to heat. So how much sabr do you have upon Allah's wrath? Ask yourselves this question. How much sabr do you have to be hungry? Some people can fast half a day, a water fast. Some people can fast Ramadan, Monday and Thursday, 3 days, 6 days of Shawwal. But many people don't have the sabr upon hunger. They don't have the sabr upon hunger. I can stand in prayer, I can give my wealth, but I can't take the pains of hunger. I can't take the migraine. I don't fast but so often because I don't have that much sabr upon that. All right? And there are other things that people have more patience upon than others. But how many of us actually have the ability to be patient upon something which is hot? Something that's burning, something that's scorching. How much sabr do you actually have? And I think that one of the best ways for us to look at this is Allah Azza wa Jalla's statement in the Quran Kareem. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ النَّارَ الَّتِي, Allah says, do you not see the fire that you kindle? Don't you see the fire that you bring to a blaze? أَأَنْتُمْ أَنْشَأْتُمْ شَجَرَتَهَا, Allah says, the wood behind that fire. Have you created it? Did you bring about the tree? Or have we brought it into existence? Have we brought the tree and the trees into existence? Allah says, نَحْنُ جَعَلْنَاهَا, we have made this fire a tadhkira, a means of reminder. And some of the companions, when they heard this verse in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, they would intentionally go to the blacksmiths or the bread makers or anyone else who used fire for their profession. And they would sit in front of their fires. Whether they had to pay them some money, or whether they had to say, keep the oven open longer. And they say, why? I'm done. I'm out of business. I'm finished making horseshoes for the day, or spears and swords, or I'm finished baking bread. He says, I want to look at the fire longer. And they would sit in front of the fire. And they would just sit and think and ask themselves, how much sabr do I have in front of this small, tiny fire? This small, tiny fire of a blacksmith that isn't that hot. How much patience do I actually have? They would ask themselves this question, and they would recite those verses, and they would interpret that verse that Allah Azza wa Jalla made the fire of the dunya a reminder for the real, true fire of the hereafter. When that being said, there's a famous story, or a story that I feel is famous to me, may not be that famous. One of my teachers told us in the Islamic University of Medina about a man who was a warrior. He was a soldier. He was a Muslim soldier, Muslim warrior. And unfortunately, one of the worst things that can possibly happen to a soldier, not death, not severe injury, but capture. It took place to him. Allah decreed for him to be captured by his enemies and his opponents. So they captured him, and perhaps he was already wounded. Obviously, after a battle, you can imagine how hungry you are, how thirsty you are, wearing armor and leather. You can imagine how dirty and soiled you become, how much blood and all types of things that can fall upon you after the battle. It's a tremendous thing. So he was a prisoner. And the non-Muslims, they took him as a captive and they threw him in jail. Of course, there was no Geneva Convention back then. There was no water or medical attention or heat or shelter. They threw him in a dark, damp cell, a dungeon, right? They threw him in his place. And they said to him, if you want attention for your wounds, or you can choose to bleed to death, it's your choice. If you want some water to drink, if you want some comfort, some shelter, if you want to be released, then you have to relinquish your religion. You have to denounce Islam, you have to denounce Muhammad, you have to denounce Allah, disbelieve, and we'll give you something to eat, something to drink, and maybe we'll release you. So of course the instinct of the soldier was, of course not. I'll be patient. So he sat there, he shivered, shook, he was wounded, he was hungry, he was hurt, he was exhausted, and he came back, says, like, what's up? Are you ready to be a Christian yet? And he said, of course not, leave me be. And they kept checking on him periodically. And they said to him, we have warm clothes for you. We have a nice warm bed for you. You can wash, but you have to drink wine. You have to drink the flesh of swine. And the only one that can tend to your medical needs is a beautiful Christian woman. And you have to relinquish Islam, and you can be with this woman, you can marry this woman, but you can't be a Muslim and get any help from us. And he refused. He was stubborn. He was extremely tenacious. He says, I'm going to be a Muslim no matter what. So the narration, it says that the only thing that he had in his cell was some type of flint or some stick or a stone or something to use to strike it and to make a fire, to light a small candle that he had with him, the fanus, the narration says. And then whenever he became really hungry, and really cold, and he was in a lot of pain, he would light the candle and he would look at it. And he would put his thumb over it, and he would hold his thumb over the candle for as long as he possibly could. And the moment that it started to burn his thumb and he had to pull his thumb back, he went back to his resolution. I'm not going to ask for any help. Even though it's permissible for him to outwardly deny Islam to receive help in that extreme situation. إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ, Allah says in the Quran. Even though he was coerced, but he refused. So he was hungry and hungry, cold and cold, and he kept looking at the candle, and he kept putting his thumb on the candle, and he asked himself, هَلْ تَصْبِرْ عَلَى هَذِهِ? Do you have patience upon this candle? How burnt is your thumb? Your nerves don't allow you to keep your thumb on a candle for more than a few seconds. So there's no way you can stand in front of Allah's punishment and be sent to the fire of hell. And he refused to give in. And eventually, obviously, he was delivered from that dungeon. The Muslims, they opened up that city and he was released. And he didn't have to humiliate himself and shame himself and show any weakness for the Muslims. So the moral of the story is what, brothers and sisters? What's the moral of the story? How does this pertain to us raising our children? It pertains to that verse, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourselves and your family, your children, your stepchildren. Save all of those who are you're in charge of. Naran, a fire. Allah doesn't say an-nar. He says naran. And we know from the sciences of the Quran is for a thing that is definite to be made indefinite. An-nar, the fire. Fattaqun nar, fear the fire. But Allah in this verse says naran, a fire. Tafkhiman li sha'niha. Allah is making it grand. He's magnifying the affair of the fire. And that's why he mentions it in fi siyaq al-nakira, naran. And it's not just an ordinary fire. So ask yourselves the question, can you stand in front of Allah's punishment? Yes or no? How much heat can you take? How strong is your physical body, the human skin? Soft and supple. What happens when it's burnt? You ever seen someone in a fire before? A 3rd-degree burn? He lives, he survives. His skin will never, ever be the same. Rather, if you ever seen someone that was in a fire before, their mind isn't the same. Their nerves, how they react, how they talk, it's never ever the same. The damage that is done by the fire, the human will never ever be the same. That's a simple basic third-degree burn. Let alone your places in the fire of hell for feeding your children haram, for abusing your children, beating them, for verbally abusing your children, disrespecting them, for wasting your children, not giving your children their haqq, their rights. Imagine you being thrown in the fire of hell. Allah gave you a beautiful son named Abdurrahman. He gave you a beautiful daughter named Fatima, and you wasted that blessing. You wasted that gift. You didn't appreciate what Allah had gave you. The child was not mentally ill. The child was not mentally disabled. The child had all toes, all fingers. Beautiful son named Abdurrahman. Strong body. Allah gave you that child, and you wasted it. You neglected it. You harmed it. You abused it. Imagine Allah throwing you in the fire of hell just for that one sin. So we have to ask ourselves, are we truly patient upon Allah's punishment? What happens if we had to put our hands in an oven for 5 minutes? What happens if we were in a terrible house fire? How will we walk out? If you have the correct answer, then that has to be the fuel, that has to be the ignition, and it has to be the push to read and to study and to listen to as many lectures as you possibly can on the proper way of raising children. So this verse here is considered to be the asl. And the Sahaba, they said about it, أَدِّبُوهُمْ وَعَلِّمُوهُمْ قُوا أَنفُسُكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourselves and your family from a fire through teaching your children and disciplining your children, giving them adab, giving them etiquette. So therefore, learning and practicing. Theory and practice. So of course we have this ayah and this interpretation. Do not feed your children in the haram. Give your child a good name. And it's a long list of do's and don'ts. But that's not what I want to talk about specifically. I want to give you one piece of advice, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with regards to raising children. An idea came to me when I walked into the masjid, and I saw it on your bulletin board. Very nice bulletin board, very attractive bulletin board. And I noticed something that you really don't see in most other masjids. All masjids have announcements. This class, this is a karate class, or a sewing class, or a cooking class, an Islamic lecture, Umrah trip, a Hajj trip, etc. But I noticed that on the board, it was a collage of different flyers and announcements. And there was a medley of colors on the wall. And this one says miscellaneous, this type of class, that type of class, this type of lecture, etc. It was organized and it was broken down into categories. Is this not the case? I didn't see this in too many masjids. In most masjids, they have their announcements, what? Just all in one place. Without any type of sectioning off, any type of categorization. In other words, if you're looking for something specific, this is where you find it. Women, girls, children, men, etc., etc., etc. So that made me think about something with regards to raising children. And it made me think about another thing that we were discussing the other day when we were in London. It's one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite pastimes, and that is drinking tea. I love tea, alhamdulillah. Love to drink tea, all different types of tea. So as we were doing a tea ceremony, the brothers and the sisters there were very excited, and they were asking what type of tea is it, and what do you put in it, and how do you make it, and so on and so on and so forth. And it all comes into my mind like this. One of the most important principles of tea is that tea is a world in itself. The secondly most consumed beverage in the world, after water and before coffee. It's number 2. Tea is experienced and enjoyed in all 6 continents, from east to west and north to south. And one of the most important principles of tea, after the fact that it's such a wide world, is that tea is diverse. There isn't one style of making tea. There isn't one flavor of tea. There isn't one type of body of tea. And there are different ways of preparing it and drinking it. And a capital mistake is for a person to think that his way of preparation is the best way and the only way. And this is the problem that we ran into in London with some of the brothers and sisters. Where's the milk? Where's the sugar? It doesn't taste like anything, or it's a detox, or it's too bitter, or it's too light, or it's too simple. Their minds were narrow, and they weren't experienced with the different types of tea. So we have one plant, Camellia sinensis. All other variations are where it is grown, how it is prepared, what time of the year, etc. but tea all goes back to one basic root. So we have Earl Grey, for example, right? Or English breakfast or Irish breakfast, right? And then we have oolong. Then we have white jasmine, all right? Different types of tea, right? We have roasted tea. We have tea, which actually isn't a tea leaf. It's a combination of herbs, and they just call it tea. So this one is boiled with a certain temperature. And this one is prepared with milk. And this one is prepared with sugar. And this one is prepared with brown sugar. And this recipe has honey. And this recipe, you put nothing in it. This one has to steep for 5 minutes. This one has to infuse for 30 seconds. This is left in overnight. And in the United States, we like to have iced tea, cold tea, which many people consider to be an abomination. Tea can't be cold, it has to be hot. The point that I'm trying to get to is what? Is that there's so many different styles of tea. Making it, drinking it, serving it, and preparing it. There's matcha tea. Everyone understand this? We have tea which is a powder, tea which is a rolled up leaf, tea which is something which is roasted like a piece of bark, piece of wood, and there's tea that comes from flowers. So what do we learn from tea? Is that it's a mistake to make Earl Grey like Irish breakfast. It's a mistake to drink tea the English way in Germany. The Germans use lemon, the English use milk. It's a mistake to take the English way of tea when you're in India, in which there's chai, and there's a different type of milk, and a different type of spice. And the Somalis, they have a tea that they like to drink with certain spices, cloves and cardamom. Every tea has its own nature. And if you think that you're going to boil it the same, prepare it the same, it's going to taste the same, it's going to come out the same way, then you're going to miss out on the special experience of tea. That's the point, is that things are different. And you can't make the tea how you want to make it, or how another person says it should look and how it should taste. They asked us about the tea ceremony. How am I supposed to sit? What hand am I supposed to use for this? Do what you want to do. Whatever makes you happy. Whatever brings you relaxation, that is the proper way of conducting the tea ceremony. And the same applies to children. Children are different. They're not the same. A boy is not like a girl is not like a boy. A grandson, a grandchild is not like an actual son. Your oldest is not going to be like the middle. The middle is not going to be like the youngest. This child has this talent that Allah gave him. And your next child has to work and has to earn it. And has to struggle to do what this child was naturally born to do. This child is inclined towards the religion. Another, unfortunately, is inclined towards the worldly life. One is an athlete. One is a scholar. One is very emotional and soft and cries. You can easily hurt this child's feelings. And this child you can joke around with, or they can go through certain things. They're tougher. They have thicker skin. Every single child is different. And also the location of the child. The tea that's grown in the mountains is not like the tea that's grown in the lowlands, even though it all comes from one plant, Camellia sinensis. It's all the same. It comes from one father, one mother. But because this child was born in the UK, you're going to have to raise them a little different than a child that was born in Pakistan. It's different now, even though they're all your sons. They look just like you. But it's a mistake as a father or mother to force your methodology of raising them, and it is the incorrect methodology, not for children in general, but for this child. Children are different. Allah says in the Quran, "Inna sa'yakum lashatta." The deeds that you perform are very, very diverse. Inna sa'yakum lashatta. What you do is different. And the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, they had a great deal of diversity among them. And the Prophet ﷺ never rejected the diversity. He never pushed it away. Rather, instead, he welcomed the diversity and he dealt with his companions accordingly. And this is why the scholars of Islam say there's so many different narrations in which the Prophet ﷺ tells us, Afdalul amal, afdalul a'mal, the best deeds. One hadith says the best deed is charity. A second hadith says the best deed is hajj. A third hadith says the best deed is seeking knowledge. The best deed is kind treatment of your parents. The best deed is to stand. The best thing to do is to make an abundance of sujood. The best virtuous act is to leave in the cause of Allah and come back with nothing. The best time to fast, these days. The best nights, these nights. The best supplication to make, Sayyidul Istighfar. The Prophet ﷺ says the best way of making istighfar. And there's so many different narrations which seem to be conflicting. Muta'arida. It doesn't make any sense. One hadith says the best deed is prayer, and another hadith says the best deed is Hajj. So is the Prophet not making any sense? Have you ever asked yourself this question? How do we have 5 hadiths and they all say the best deed? Ahabbul deen ilallah. Ahabbul amal ilallah. Ahabbul amali ilallah. The best deed. The scholars of Islam, they say one of the ways for us to harmonize between these narrations is that the Prophet ﷺ spoke to the companions based off of their personalities. And he spoke to them based off of the time and the location. So when the Muslims were hungry and starving, the best deed was it'am ta'am, giving food. And when the Muslims were weak and being oppressed and wrong, the best deed was striving in Allah's cause. And when the Muslims needed knowledge and education and the Quran, etc., ilm and the ulama, the best deed is Hajj during Hajj season. The best time to fast is this recommended fast. Wahakadha. So the Prophet ﷺ, he embraced the diversity of the companions. That's the point. And he did not teach the companions. He did not nurture them and mentor them like one single man. Every companion was not going to be like Abu Bakr. Every companion wasn't like Umar. Every companion wasn't like Khadija. He dealt with Aisha like Aisha, not with Khadija or Salama or Maymuna. The Prophet ﷺ, he embraced the diversity of the companions and he dealt with them accordingly. So I think it's one of the most important pieces of advice is to understand that children are different. And how you did it in your time and your location is not necessarily how this child is going to do it. Abdurrahman is different than Fatima, even though, subhanAllah, they're 1 year apart. Rather, they're twins, identical twins, and they have very, very different behavior. And many parents, they become frustrated and they become angry and oftentimes abusive when children don't listen to their particular way. A child may listen to an uncle before he listens to the actual father. A child will listen to the mother, and the mother said the same thing that the father said, but it's different. It's a different voice, it's a different frequency, and it's a different relationship. That's something that you can't change, and it's foolishness to attempt to, and the best way to navigate as a parent is to adjust. To adjust. Prepare the tea that you have. This tea is not meant to be strong, it's meant to be light and smooth. This tea is meant to be sweet. In Russia, that's how they drink it. It has a great deal of sweetness in it, and that's how it's supposed to be enjoyed. In Morocco, this tea is made, and a staple part of the tea is the froth. That's why they pour it so high up, and it's a skill, and it's an art, and just pouring the tea in Morocco. And if it doesn't have that froth, those bubbles on top, it's not real tea. That's not the same in Japan. Here they drink from one bowl, and they pass it around. And here, everyone has their own individual tea. In England, a person is considered to be an imposter if he doesn't know the proper tea etiquette, and that is drinking with the saucer. A person who used to be a peasant, obviously I'm talking about some years back now, who was low class, right? He drinks and he just holds the cup. But someone who is always rich and always noble, he knows that this person used to be poor. And that's because he doesn't have the saucer with him. That's aib. You must have the saucer in your hand with the cup at all times. Only a cultured person would drink like that. And an uncultured peasant would take the cup and leave the saucer down. You ever ask yourselves the question, why do people have different types of china? And why do people, which one do you put first? Is the chicken the egg or the egg in the chicken? You put the milk in the pot first or the tea first and then the milk? They're different on this. And one of the reasons is people who didn't have a lot of money, their china wasn't that fine. And they feared that it would crack if they put the hot tea in first and then the milk. So they would put the milk in first to prepare the china and keep it from cracking, then put in the tea. You get the point that I'm trying to make here? I'm not here trying to tell you about tea and the etiquette of tea, but that you must look at your children differently. And you can't force your view and your opinion because it worked with the last child, so now it must work what? With this child. That's what your father tells you, right? You're going to go to school and be a lawyer, and that's because of who? Ahmed, or Muzammil, or Mudathir. He went to school, and he was a lawyer, so now you're going to do it. And if you don't go to school and be a lawyer, you're disobedient, you're not being a good son, you don't love me, and I'm not going to help you in any endeavor in life. That's wrong, that's dhulm. That's dhulm. Muzammil is natural born lawyer. Naturally, talks well, reads well. And you are you're a natural born artist. Allah gave you the ability to draw, to paint, to sketch things that are impermissible, inshallah. And you have a talent. You're not going to go to be an artist. It's a waste of time to be an artist. Be a lawyer. That's the only profession in life to be. Ahmed did it successfully. He liked to play basketball, but he listened to me and he went to law school. How much problems come from a father realizing that Muzammil is not Ahmed, Ahmed is not Muzammil. They are two different people. Even though they came from one root, just like the what? The tea. It's the same tea leaf. But this one was rolled and this one was dried. This one was withered and this one is rolled up with flowers. The scent is like night and day. The taste is like night and day. The color is like night and day. And if you force your will upon the tea, it's going to taste bitter. It's going to be too sweet. It's going to be horrible. Oh, what is this? What is this stuff in this cup? Because you didn't follow the proper instructions on how to prepare this type of tea. And if you follow the proper instructions and you deal with the tea and its necessary diversity, you will enjoy the benefit of the tea. It tastes good. It's healthy for you. It makes you feel good. Well, alhamdulillah. And that's children. So there has to be a limit of your forcing. And there has to be a limit of your imposing. As far as if your children are all the same, then alhamdulillah. As far as if they're very similar, then alhamdulillah. But beware of following the mode of your past successes. Your past success. Ahmed is a good person, but that was 10 years ago. It's a whole new world now. And you as a person, you are also different now. 10 years ago, you didn't have the stroke. You weren't going to the doctors every other day. 10 years ago, things were different with you, with your family, with your wife. So you have to adjust. And the believer is never ever stuck on one mode, evident. As far as the principles of the religion, then those are things that never change. You must make salah like Muzammil made salah when he was 8 years old. You will go to the masjid, inshallah, like he went to the masjid. Your profession, your taste, or even down to how you dress. And subhanAllah, the more that you impose your will on your child, in most cases, the more that they disobey and rebel. Rather, sometimes you must give a little slack in the rope for it to be tight and secure. But the more that you try to force and jam your view, especially a teenager, the more they're not going to want to listen to you. Every single thing has to be your way, Father, everything. No baseball cap. You can't wear it like this. You can't dress like this. You have to do it like this. You have to do it like this. That's a problem. And obviously, there's another extreme in which you do whatever you want to do. Because my children are diverse, they're so different, you don't have to be religious at all. You don't have to practice Islam at all. You don't have to wear hijab at all because such and such did it. That's also wrong. So there's always going to be something that's generally shared between tea, and that is you need hot water, no matter what. You always need a vessel to carry it and to pour it in, to drink out of, no matter what. There has to be some type of steeping or infusion, no matter what. We can all agree on this, whether it's for 10 seconds or whether it's for 5 minutes. The water and the tea must become one. So there has to be a way of raising children. There is a form, but at the same time, the individuality, the diversity of Abdurrahman, of Ahmed, of Fatima, of this child and that child is going to be formless. So there are rules, but at the same time, there aren't rules. And if a father or mother can understand this and reflect on this from the Quran and Hadith, as we've just explained to you, some brief proofs for that, and look into life and make an example of this, that person, that mother, that father, that stepmother, without any doubt, inshallah ta'ala, are going to be successful. They're going to be successful to realize that there is no one size fits all. Every garment must be tailor-made. The time, the location, the situation, and the personality of the child, the nature of the child. Abu Bakr's nature was a bit different than this Sahabi's nature. He was softer by nature, and this one was rough and tough by nature. And the Prophet ﷺ, he dealt with them accordingly. He dealt with them accordingly, and the companions, they knew this. The companions, they understood this. In the deathbed of the Prophet ﷺ, he told Abu Bakr to be the leader of the prayer, to lead the people in congregation. And this proves that Abu Bakr was the Khalifa. Abu Bakr was to be the leader and not Ali radiallahu anhu, without any disrespect to any companion. Abu Bakr was the Khalifa of the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ was pleased with him being their spiritual guide. And if the leader of the Muslims had to be from the Prophet's bloodline, and it was a must for there to be succession through blood and through family lineage, then why did Allah allow all of the Prophet's sons to die? All of his sons to die at a young age. The sons that the Prophet ﷺ had, none of them reached full age. So if Allah knew that that's how the things had to be, the Khilafah had to be through bloodline, Allah would have allowed, at least out of His mercy, one of the Prophet's sons to do what? To remain alive. But that's not what Allah chose. That wasn't Allah's will. None of the Prophet's sons lived. And we know through kings and emperors and sultans and khans, the most important thing is for a woman to produce a what? An heir. Most important job is to produce an heir. And if you don't produce an heir, you have failed as a queen or as a princess or as a sultana or any name that's given, a concubine. If you have not produced an heir to the king, to the khan, it's of no use. You have no place in this castle or this palace. You must have at least one son. And if you don't have a son, then the bloodline cannot continue. Everyone understand this? But that wasn't the sunnah of Allah. Allah chose Fatima radiallahu anha to live and to survive. She wasn't a man. So the succession did not have to be just in blood. Al-Muhim, back to the point that I'm trying to get to, and it's the last thing I'm going to say, is that the Messenger of Allah, والسلام, he wanted Abu Bakr to be the leader in the prayer. But the companions, Aisha, this companion, that companion, they felt that Abu Bakr was too soft. Meaning he was so emotional. He was touched by the Quran. And whenever he prayed, he would cry so much. And the Muslims at that time, they needed someone that was a bit stronger outwardly. But the Prophet knew otherwise. And this companion whispered to that one, tell him to tell Fulan to lead the prayer. Tell him to tell such and such to lead the prayer. And the Prophet says, Inna kunna la sawahibu Yusuf. He says, you women are plotting and scheming like the women plotted and schemed against Yusuf. Mur Abu Bakr and yusalli ibn Nas. Tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. And they kept making an excuse. O Messenger of Allah, innahu rajulun asifun. ومتى ما يقوم مقامك لا يكاد يسمع الناس من البكاء. He says he's too soft, asif. And whenever he stands, he cries so much. Get someone else to lead the prayer. And the Prophet, he said it again and again and again. Tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. So the Messenger of Allah, he never denied the fact that Abu Bakr was soft. He never denied the fact that he was different than other companions. But that's who the leader was supposed to be. So the point is, in brief, as a successful parent, a Muslim parent, you must accept the diversity of your children. And you must deal with your children accordingly. There are rules. It doesn't mean that the Islamic tradition is neglected. No. We're talking about flexibility within the Sharia. Flexibility within the Sunnah. The correct principles, but every child is different. And you must deal with your children accordingly. And if you do, inshallah ta'ala, you will enjoy your children. And it will be a means of pleasure in this life and a means of pleasure in hereafter. They'll make dua for you when you pass. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, Allah will allow them to intercede for you, to make shafa'ah, the shafa'ah of the child for the father, for the parent. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, in paradise you will be with them, even if you're on a higher level. Allah will allow them to be granted elevation for them to be with you in Jannah, if you do it the correct way. And if you don't do it the correct way, and it has to be your way, and it can only be one speed, and it can only be one mode, then of course you're going to suffer the consequences in this life and in hereafter. And many people leave Islam because of what they feel and think of bad parenting. Many people, they'll leave Islam. They don't want to practice because of how their fathers and mothers treat them. And that is nothing more than the example of a cup of tea. If you prepare it the proper way, you will enjoy it. If you prepare it the way that you want to, or what you think and feel like the other tea is made, it's not going to come out the way in which it's supposed to come out. Allah surely knows best. We ask Him to allow us to successfully raise our children and successfully be fathers and mothers and parents, and to be united with our children in this life, and inshallah ta'ala in the hereafter. We ask Allah for this. Allah surely knows best. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khairan. Sure, no problem.
Just to thank Sheikh Mufti Munir for coming. If anybody has any quick questions, inshallah, we can directly ask the Sheikh regarding raising children.
If there are any questions, brothers, feel free. If we know the answer, we'll try to give it to you. Bidnillahi ta'ala, on the topic or off the topic. Bidnillahi ta'ala, no problem, inshallah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, like you said, different places, like where you were brought up and how you were brought up in Philadelphia,
Correct.
and the way you were brought up there, and the way people are being brought up here. But there is a universal
For sure.
problem that we do have as parents, which is the modern life. That every new thing brings a new problem. How should we tackle with the new things that we receive? Be it knife crime, drugs,
Clear.
whatever's new.
Crystal clear. Got you. Jazakallah khairan. With regards to location, as you mentioned in the lecture, you come from Philadelphia. We're here in a country or a land or a city or a town, but there are always universal problems, ills all around the board that all people suffer from, despite their religion, their language, their dialect, despite what they look like, etc. How do we deal with these things? Well, with regards to tackling problems, all problems you shouldn't try to tackle. Sometimes you have to move out the way. Sometimes something may be too strong, too fast, too big, and it's best to avoid a thing, even if temporary. It's only at the moment. Right now, this is a lot of momentum, and it doesn't make sense for you to do something which is suicidal. So with regards to things and how they change and how things develop, there's always going to be the same emotions, same feelings, and same desires of a human being, no matter what. There's going to be lust, there's going to be greed, there's going to be cowardice, there's going to be bravery, there's going to be insecurity, there's going to be doubt. There's always going to be a hero and there's always going to be a villain, no matter what, where you go, where you are, what place, what time. The human is always going to suffer or enjoy these feelings and these emotions. So the rules of wisdom never, ever change, period. It never changes, all right? However, the form, the content may change, but it isn't the wisest thing to always fight and to go against. I'll give a perfect example of this. Video games, cell phones, technology. There are many parents who are very, very old-fashioned, and there's nothing wrong with being old-fashioned. I consider myself to be extremely old-fashioned type of person. I have new things, novelties, gadgets, but I'm an old-fashioned type of person. And anyone who knows me knows that Mufti is old-fashioned. But you can't always be against something which is new or different. And sometimes you must accept certain things. So we have two schools of thought now, a cell phone and a child. There are parents who say children have no business with a cell phone. A cell phone is unnecessary. They want to do this, they're going to watch that, they're going to listen to this, they're going to end up with this crowd. A child should never have a cell phone until they're 15, 16, etc. And then there are others who say the exact opposite. A baby can play with a cell phone. 2 years old, you'd be shocked how children swipe a touch screen. You'd be shocked. How quick they learn how to play with a tablet. You'd be shocked. How they learn how to use an app faster than you, let alone 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. Someone should be given a phone or given a tablet or allowed to play a video game, etc. And then there are those who have a balance. Every age, everything, every game, every video, an actual phone with data, unlimited data, etc. But I'm not against a young Muslim having a phone. 10 years old, they have their own phone. And in case of an emergency, in case something is happening, they can read, they can study on the phone. The concept of social media in which they keep contact and relations with their young girlfriends in school, in the Islamic school, or whatever school that they go to. So the point is, many people, they're just against it just because it's new. They're against the phone, they're against technology, and that's wrong. And many people, they don't give any limitations or any type of etiquette, and that's also wrong. But be balanced, take the good in it, because wallahi, I don't think you can win the war with the cell phone. I don't think you can win the war with technology, with the internet. 20 years ago, maybe you could. 15 years ago, perhaps. In the late 90s, maybe you could win. But 2019, you can't win. It's a new phone coming out, a faster phone, a new tablet. Everything is digital. Everything is online. Everything. Follow us, Facebook. You can't win a war. So it really doesn't make sense for you to try to tackle this. Rather, you may have to step to the side. Or you may have to learn how to adapt to it, to Islamify it, to put restrictions on it. And most importantly, teach your children a responsibility with the phone and with video games. You can't play it all day, even though it's a permissible game, but not for 5 hours straight. You can't play this game because it's a bad game. You can talk on the phone, but not during this time. I'll allow you to use this because you've performed this, etc. All right? So that's just an example. As far as violence, gun violence, drugs, and things like this, then the city of Philadelphia is a very diverse city. It's not just all crime. It's not just all suburbs. It's not just all concrete jungle. It's diverse. You have all different races in Philadelphia, different types of Muslims in Philadelphia. But there lies no doubt that gun violence is very rampant there. Me, myself, I had many friends and family members shot and killed in the street. Something that you would never, ever believe. And we come to the UK and we make jokes, and brothers make jokes, say the cops don't have guns, the cops don't carry guns, police officers don't carry guns. That would never, ever work, in America, a police officer without a gun. There are people who are willing to try the police officer with the gun. They know that he has a gun, and they're still willing to fight with a police officer. And there's so many 9 to 5 average people walking on the street with guns. You'll be shocked. You'll be appalled if I told you some of the horror stories of inner city gun violence. Inner city gun violence, all right? So this is something which is a fitna, and it's a musibah. Gangs, drugs, pornography, all of these problems, tattoos, people leaving Islam. These are major problems that we have and we face and we suffer with regards to our children. And oftentimes those who make these drugs, whether it's a drug behind a flat screen, an internet drug, or a physical drug, because there's different types of addiction in 2019. It's different types of addiction. The people who make these things, they realize that in most cases we're not going to get this old man from this Muslim country to leave Islam. We can't get this person to have doubt about evolution or creation. Is the earth flat? Is the earth... We can't. He's too planted in Islam. He's 60 years old. He's 40 years old. He was raised Muslim. He'll never, ever leave Islam, inshallah. He'll never leave Islam. But the children who have different mindsets, different education, different accent, different culture, different style, we can work on them. And we may not be able to get the second generation of Muslims to leave Islam, but we can weaken their faith. And we can bring up doubts and cause doubts. And the grandchildren in the UK, father came from Bangladesh. He's not going to leave Islam. Second generation, we can get him to smoke, we can get him to drink. But the third generation was totally British. Doesn't speak anything from his homeland, no culture of his homeland, never been taught properly of Islam. We can get this one to actually denounce Islam through sports, through education, through drugs, and through lusts. Enjoy yourself. All you have to do is just open up the screen, and the amount of dopamine that's released to the brain from 5 minutes of you watching this, you'll never, ever be able to walk away from. This is a fitna. And we have to realize this. We have to arm ourselves, arm our children. First and foremost is dua. And then we have to act upon that dua. If we ask Allah to guide us, we have to strive for guidance. Spending quality time with your children, teaching them, warning them, giving them a sense of worth and a sense of value. If you don't want your son to join a gang, then make him a part of your gang. Most people, if you discuss gang violence and the culture of gangs in America, there's so many different gangs, Bloods, Crips, so many gangs. And they have made studies on gangs. And one of the biggest reasons why people join gangs is they need to feel a part of something. They want to feel a part of a family. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel protected. They want to feel like they're worth something. And you'll be shocked the amount of loyalty that they give to the gang. And it's easy for you to say, gangs don't make any sense. Gangs are stupid. Why would you join a gang? That's easy for you to say. But a person who's being bullied, a person who's being abused, a person who never had a father, never had a mother, was never part of something, they're loved in this gang. They love them. They do love them. They care for this person and they make them feel a part of something. So therefore, if I want my son not to join a gang, I can't say, I'm too busy, son. I'm traveling the world giving da'wah right now. I can't come to your recitation. Or I don't have no time to go to the park with you and play soccer. Or you can just go to sleep. Your Ummi, she can read you a story to sleep. Or inshallah, I'll look at it later on. Look, Abby, I got an A. Look, Abby, oh, inshallah, right. What is the question you have, brother? If I'm so busy being Sheikh Mufti all the time, and I don't have no time for my son, and to spend quality time with him, going to a park, kicking the ball around, buying him an ice cream cone, I can't get mad at him for him joining the gang because he feels appreciated there. He feels loved there. He feels protected there. He gets attention there. I can't get mad at him. So I can't make dua, oh Allah, protect my son, keep him safe, and then I myself do not strive to do the necessary requirements of that supplication. And the same applies to a girl. You don't want your daughter to grow up and be unchaste and to be womanized and abused by men and falling into other problematic things. How much time do you spend with your daughter? Do you make your daughter feel like a queen? Do you tell her that she's beautiful? No matter what the standard of beauty is, you're short, but you're still beautiful. Your skin is this color, but I think that you're the most beautiful woman in the world. How much do you give to your children? What things do you do for your children to keep them away from those claws and those fangs, those hooks, gangs, drugs, alcohol, violence? So most people who get caught up in these things, you find that the father wasn't there. He was in jail, father's dead, or the father hates the mother so much that he takes out the hatred for her on the poor, miskin children. Or, unfortunately, waliyadu billah, I was too busy being an imam. I was too busy teaching, or even worse than that, talking about people on the internet, instead of raising my own children and spending quality time with them. So therefore, it is upon us as parents to make dua to Allah. That's first and foremost. Allah is the only one that can guide them. And He's the only one that can keep them firm. No one else can guide to the straight path and keep people firm upon the straight path besides Allah. Number two, it is upon us as parents to do the requirements of this dua through education, through tarbiyah, through spending quality time, etc. Number three, it is upon us to embrace the realities of life and teach them to our children. Tell your son as soon as he can understand, son, life is not a walk in the park. My children, wallahi, I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. They always fight and they always argue. Maybe they're watching this live stream right now. They're always fighting and arguing. Abby this, Abby that. They fight and they argue. And one says, that's not fair, Abby. That's not fair. He always gets to sleep with you. She always gets to sit next to you. She always gets to pick first. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. All the time, right? So it was a time in my life in which I would tell my children, don't say that. I do give you the equal treatment. That's not true. You have an insecurity. You're the middle child. You're the oldest. You're jealous of the youngest child because he's the only boy. Wallahi. But then as the years passed, I started realizing that it's not going to work. And they're going to believe that it's unfair no matter what you do for them. You buy the middle one, the biggest toy, the older one is going to say, oh, I wanted that one. You go and you bring them back toys from a trip. Hers is nice. Oh, I wanted that one. I thought that you would say it's too small or it's too ugly. No, I want that one. They always want to fight. So I tell them now, and you're right, son. You're right, daughter. Life isn't fair. You're absolutely right. It's not fair. No matter what I do of trying to be just, life isn't fair. That's true. And I tell my daughters this, wallahi, Allah is my witness. The moment you understand that life isn't fair, the easier it is to deal with. You have to realize that life isn't fair. There's always advantages and disadvantages. So don't paint the world to your children as some pretty, perfect utopia. No, son. No, daughter. There are people that want to lie and steal and cheat. And there are people out there that are going to be as if predators, and you could be prey. There are people out there that don't like you, that hate you. There are people out there that will envy you. There are people out there, and you tell them you can ruin your life with one bad mistake. One bad, poor decision, your life is gone. So we have to tell our children the reality of life, the reality of the hayatul dunya. Tell your children life does not remain forever. The paradise is inshallah, the place for the believer, not this world. And there's nothing wrong with having nice things. You can eat cookies and cake and ice cream. You can have fun. You want to play video games. You want to laugh around. Alhamdulillah. We all like to eat nice things. We all like to have nice things. I would be the biggest hypocrite, bigger than I already am, if I said you can't have anything nice and you can't have nice things. We all have nice things. How many brand names do you see? We all have nice. We like to dress nice. It's natural. But it's not permanent, son. It's not going to last forever, son. And there's something which is bigger, better, sweeter, greener, cleaner, and happier than this cesspool called hayatul dunya. And everything that you do in life, know for sure that it's temporary. And it's supposed to push you to that real destination, and that's Jannah. Teach your children about sin. Okay? So that's my advice. And you can't always lie to your children. You can't lie to your children any time. But many people, they try to just keep the ills of society away from their children. Sometimes you have to teach them this. Sometimes you have to show them how things could be. And life is not always sweet and pleasant. Arm them, educate them, and inshallah ta'ala give them a fighting chance. With your dua, with the time that you spend with them, the education that you give them, and most importantly, them knowing and having the information, they have a better chance. And there lies no doubt, there are many things when we were younger we fell into, and we did because we never were warned. And we didn't know that's how it works. And we had to learn the hard way. We had to suffer. We had to fall into the mistake and say, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been there with that person. So you have to prepare your children for the real world, and most importantly, prepare them for the time in which you will not be around. And Allah is my witness. I always say this to my children. Don't think that I'm going to be here every time with you. A time is going to come in which I will not be here, and you have to make the decision. Abby, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? What kind of ice cream should we get? I tell them, you pick. No, Abby, you pick. You always get the good stuff. You have to learn how to get good ice cream because I'm not going to be here. And it applies to having a boyfriend, having a girlfriend, getting a tattoo, making salat on time, taking our hijab, doing drugs, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, watching haram things on the internet. I'm not going to be there to say cut the computer off. You're going to have access to khabith, filthy things. You have to be responsible not to watch that. You have to make the decision not to drink. You have to make the decision not to smoke and not to get that tattoo. I can't force you to do that. So educate them, teach them, and do not lie to them. And the worst thing that you can do with a child is sugarcoat life. It's the worst thing that you can do because they won't be able to handle the bitter nastiness of it, thinking that it's supposed to taste like sugar. And Allah surely knows best. Khalas, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Just to thank Mufti Munir again for having visited us. Inshallah, we hope he comes again. Jazakumullahu khairan. Inshallah, we finish the program there.
وإياكم.
Thank you.